Freya spots Setsuna chained, and Kureha watches the crowd silently. And in this recap, Freya and Setsuna gamble trust together. Kureha corners Freya as Setsuna's fury sparks Renard's violent hunt. Wait till you see Freya and Kureha corner Renard in flames. Setsuna and Freya face a hostage moment that breaks rules. And Kureha and Setsuna unleash justice when the blade drops. Kiru walks beside Freya with calm eyes and hidden hunger. They enter Lanarita quietly, blending with traders and tired travelers. Freya watches guards closely, sensing danger behind every polite smile. Kiru studies alleys, counting exits, mapping threats without hesitation. A rough poster mentions an auction, and whispers spread fast. Freya hears the word slave and stiffens, fighting old guilt. Kiru follows the rumor because it connects to power. The crowd thickens near a platform ringed by armed men. Coins flash, voices rise, and cruelty feels like public sport. On the platform stands Setsuna, an ice wolf demi-human. Her wolf ears twitch, and her eyes burn with hate. Chains bite her wrists, and bruises mark recent punishment. The seller calls her a rare prize, promising obedience. Setsuna spits back, refusing to bow despite the threats. Freya flinches, remembering how nobles once treated lives cheaply. Kiru keeps his face cold, hiding anger under calculation. He knows force here would trigger guards and bloodshed. He raises his bid calmly, drowning louder men with certainty. The seller smiles, sensing easy profit in Kiru's silence. Setsuna glares at Kiru, expecting another cruel owner. Kiru pays without drama, and the crowd grumbles disappointed. Freya follows closely, ready to run if soldiers suddenly move. They leave the platform, and Setsuna drags chains behind her. Kiru leads them into an inn, choosing a back room. The door shuts, and Setsuna tenses like a cornered predator. Freya offers water gently, trying to lower Setsuna's fear. Setsuna refuses, accusing them of tricks and soft lies. Kiru answers plainly, saying survival needs choices and strength. Setsuna laughs bitterly, saying choices never belonged to slaves. Kiru steps closer, but he keeps his hands visible. He says he bought her to break the chain system. Freya watches Kiru carefully, surprised by his controlled restraint. Setsuna scans the room, searching for hidden weapons. Kiru sets a blade on the table, handle toward Setsuna. Setsuna hesitates, then grips it, testing their intentions. Kiru tells her to strike if she believes he lies. Setsuna's arm shakes, torn between rage and instinct. Freya whispers that freedom starts with one brave decision. Setsuna lowers the blade slowly, still refusing to trust. Kiru nods, accepting her suspicion as earned armor. He explains their enemies are knights and nobles in Gyral. Setsuna's eyes narrow, recognizing names from whispered nightmares. Kiru says he hunts those men, starting with Renard. Freya reacts, remembering Renard's reputation as a brutal captain. Setsuna asks why a healer talks like an executioner. Kiru says healing taught him pain, and pain taught focus. Freya feels the room chill, sensing Kiru's storm rising. Setsuna tests the chain lock, then looks at Kiru again. Kiru promises no comfort, only power and purpose. Setsuna agrees to listen, because hatred needs direction. The next morning, Kiru buys clothes that do not shame. Freya chooses a cloak for Setsuna, hiding ears from stares. Setsuna hates hiding, but she hates hunters more. Kiru leads them through markets, avoiding patrol routes carefully. A group of soldiers passes, and Setsuna's breath catches. Freya steadies her, keeping steps even, acting casual. Kiru spots a familiar crest and stiffens inside. The crest belongs to Renard's men, hunting a rumored criminal. Kiru keeps walking, but his mind sharpens like drawn steel. He knows exposure now would ruin long-planned revenge. Still, Renard's shadow follows, tightening the town's air. They reach a riverside path, aiming to leave Lanarita. Setsuna notices a lone swordswoman watching the water quietly. The swordswoman is Kureha Clearet, famed for strict justice. Freya recognizes her armor style and her disciplined posture. Kiru keeps his hood low, but Kureha's gaze locks. Kureha steps forward, sensing skill beneath Kiru's ordinary pace. She speaks calmly, asking where his sword training came from. Kiru answers carefully, claiming he learned on harsh roads. Kureha circles once, reading footwork, reading breath, reading intent. Setsuna shifts behind Kiru, ready to fight without permission. Freya grips her cloak, urging patience through quiet body language. Kureha challenges Kiru to a friendly exchange, testing truth. Kiru refuses politely, but his refusal sounds too practiced. Kureha smiles slightly, more suspicious than offended. She draws her blade halfway, demanding proof of harmless travel. Renard's patrol appears in the distance, moving toward the river. Kiru measures timing, weighing silence against sudden violence. Setsuna's claws tense, and her eyes flash bright silver. Freya whispers that Renard cannot see them together here. Kiru steps into position, shielding Freya and Setsuna carefully. He decides one clean display will clear their path. Like this video if you want more tense moments explained. Subscribe for daily recaps that keep the story clear. Comment whether Kiru should fight Kureha or flee. If you really like the story, comment below, so we can create more episodes daily. Kureha's blade rises, and Kiru's mask finally begins cracking. Kureha snaps her blade fully free and challenges Kiru again. Kiru plants his feet and keeps his hood shadowed. Freya pulls Setsuna back because soldiers are nearing fast. Renard's patrol marches closer with torches and heavy boots. Kureha mistakes Kiru for an attacker of kingdom soldiers. Kiru refuses excuses because time is draining away quickly. Kureha lunges first and her strike cuts the air cleanly. Kiru slips aside and counters with borrowed sword footwork. Sparks jump as steel meets steel beside rushing water. Setsuna watches closely and memorizes every move for later. Freya scans the road and counts helmets approaching their position. Kiru realizes the duel must end before Renard arrives. Kureha presses harder and forces Kiru to block repeatedly. Kiru's sleeve tears and his forearm takes shallow damage. Kureha narrows her eyes because he fights like trained royalty. Kiru changes rhythm and throws a dagger to distract. Kureha deflects it and answers with a spinning slash. Kiru ducks low and slides under her blade line. He taps her wrist and knocks her grip slightly off. Kureha recovers instantly and kicks his shoulder with force. Kiru stumbles back and breathes once to steady anger. Freya starts forward, but Kureha flicks her away harshly. Freya falls and Setsuna snarls with wolf rage rising. Kiru raises his hand to stop Setsuna from charging blindly. He knows this knight believes she serves justice honestly. Kureha shouts that criminals hide behind women and slaves. Kiru answers that soldiers hid behind crowns and burned villages. Kureha hesitates because his words sound too specific and bitter. Renard's men shout nearby and the patrol spreads outward quickly. Kiru realizes exposure will cost everything they have built. He draws Kureha closer and forces a tight exchange of blows. Their blades blur and the riverbank stones crack beneath pressure. Kureha smiles grimly because she finally found a worthy opponent. Kiru feels pain, but he welcomes it as useful leverage. He pretends weakness and invites Kureha into a committed strike. Kureha bites and swings with full weight toward his arm. Kiru lets it happen and uses the moment to trap her. Kureha's cut lands and shock crosses Freya's face instantly. Kiru stays calm because his healing can reverse losses. He grips Kureha's collar and slams her against a tree. Kureha struggles hard and tries to knee him free. Kiru pins her with pressure points and controlled strength. Setsuna moves closer, ready to finish the fight quickly. Kiru orders Setsuna to stand down and watch closely. Kureha demands answers and spits that he fights dishonorably. Kiru says honor is a story told by those holding whips. He produces a small vial and splashes it toward her face. Kureha inhales and her focus shakes as heat floods senses. Kiru uses that opening to subdue her without killing. Freya looks away because the method feels cruel and wrong. Kiru regrows his injured arm and seals the wound cleanly. Kureha freezes because no normal swordsman can do that. Kiru touches her temple and forces memories into her mind. Images of soldiers abusing Setsuna's clan crash through Kureha's certainty. Kureha's expression breaks as the truth overturns her belief. She collapses shaking and the sword drops beside wet grass. Renard's patrol reaches the river and sees bodies and disorder. Kiru hides Kureha quickly and drags Freya toward cover. Setsuna helps and carries Kureha away from torchlight. They escape into the trees as Renard's men search angrily. Freya whispers that Renard will chase harder after this. Kiru agrees and says tonight they cannot stay visible. They reach an inn on the outskirts and lock the door. Kureha wakes later and stares at Kiru with dread. Kiru reveals his name and admits he is the healing hero. Kureha recalls a healed injury and realizes he saved her before. Freya steps in wearing Flair's face as a deliberate lie. Kureha reels because she thought the princess was dead. Freya claims she faked death to expose the kingdom's crimes. Kureha listens because the memories still burn behind her eyes. Kiru offers one deal and demands her help against Renard. Kureha agrees reluctantly because justice now points elsewhere. Like this video if you enjoy tense battles and hard truths. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns without confusing details. Comment whether Kureha deserves trust after learning the truth. If you really like the story, comment below, so we can create more episodes daily. Night deepens and Renard chooses violence to regain control. Renard storms a nearby area and captures people for bait. He boasts that Kiru will crawl out to save them. Kiru hears reports and his calm mask tightens dangerously. Freya asks what Renard wants besides revenge and fear. Kiru answers that Renard enjoys pain because he feels empty. Setsuna insists they strike first before more lives get crushed. Kureha offers strategy and says Renard favors intimidation tactics. Kiru prepares disguises and moves toward Renard's controlled building. They watch from shadows and see prisoners guarded by soldiers. Renard laughs loudly and orders a message sent to Kiru. Kiru moves in and takes down a guard silently. Freya distracts another guard with a borrowed noble tone. Setsuna disables a sentry and drags him into darkness. Kureha cuts a lock and frees shaking prisoners quickly. Renard senses something wrong and draws his sword with excitement. He steps outside and calls Kiru by the old degrading name. Kiru steps forward and refuses to flinch this time. Renard demands Kiru kneel and promises new suffering publicly. Kiru answers that tonight the predator finally becomes prey. Renard attacks but Kureha intercepts and blocks his first strike. Renard sneers and says Kureha should obey the kingdom. Kureha declares the kingdom lied and she chose real justice. Renard orders his men forward and the street erupts into chaos. Kiru moves through fighters like a surgeon cutting threats apart. Freya protects prisoners and guides them toward the alley exit. Setsuna unleashes fury and her wolf instincts push soldiers back. Renard retreats inside and screams that Kiru destroyed his pride. Kiru follows and the building turns into a trap of firelight. Renard tries bargaining and offers information about Kiru's past village. Kiru freezes because he hears one name that still hurts. Renard says Anna is suffering and laughs at Kiru's silence. Kiru's eyes harden and he rushes out into night. Freya and Setsuna chase him as Kureha holds the line. Kiru runs toward home with dread rising like choking smoke. He reaches the village outskirts and finds it torn and burning. He hears a weak call and recognizes Anna's fading voice. Kiru races through smoke and hears Anna calling from rubble. He finds her under a collapsed beam and lifts carefully. Anna coughs and whispers that Renard's men raided at dusk. She says they demanded names and burned homes for amusement. Freya kneels beside Anna and presses water to her lips. Setsuna watches the flames and growls at distant marching boots. Kiru asks where survivors fled and Anna points weakly eastward. She says a granary shelter holds children and wounded elders. Kiru carries Anna toward the shelter with fierce, steady steps. Freya guides them through alleys where ash falls like dark snow. Setsuna scouts ahead and signals when patrols change direction. Kiru hears laughter nearby and feels anger tighten his chest. He remembers Renard's grin and the degrading names he used. Anna begs Kiru not to risk others just to punish Renard. Kiru answers that protecting lives now is also revenge. They reach the granary door and hear frightened whispers inside. Kureha stands there guarding survivors with her sword drawn. Her face hardens when she sees the village reduced to embers. Kiru places Anna down and checks her breathing with focus. He heals her burns enough to stop the shaking and bleeding. Anna cries softly and clutches Kiru's sleeve with gratitude. Kiru looks away because the sound breaks his control. Freya wraps a blanket around Anna and comforts her gently. Setsuna listens to children sobbing and her ears tremble. Kiru tells everyone to stay low and keep lights hidden. A soldier shouts outside and demands the shelter open immediately. Kureha whispers that Renard wants witnesses and fear tonight. Kiru moves to the doorway and listens for the patrol pattern. He hears Renard's voice carried on smoke and cruel pride. Renard announces a public hunt and calls Kiru a monster. Kiru steps outside because hiding will not stop slaughter. Freya grabs his arm but he steadies her with calm eyes. Setsuna follows close because she refuses cages and cowards. Kureha joins them because justice requires action, not comfort. They see Renard near the square with prisoners tied together. Torches circle the crowd and soldiers cheer at every scream. Renard smiles and promises mercy if Kiru kneels and begs. Kiru says mercy belongs to victims, not to tyrants. Renard orders an arrow fired toward the shelter entrance. Kiru sprints and blocks the shot before it hits anyone. Villagers gasp and Renard laughs louder at the display. Kiru warns Renard to release captives or face consequences. Renard answers by dragging one prisoner forward as a shield. Setsuna snarls and steps forward but Kiru holds her back. Kureha raises her blade and demands Renard stop the terror. Renard mocks Kureha and calls her loyalty weak and broken. Kureha replies that loyalty without truth is simple obedience. Renard signals his men and the square erupts into violence. Kiru moves like a surgeon, cutting threats with precise strikes. He avoids villagers and disables soldiers with controlled force. Freya pulls captives free and guides them behind broken walls. Setsuna tackles guards and tears chains apart with wild fury. Kureha duels Renard's best fighters and keeps the line steady. Renard retreats toward a burning house and shouts for reinforcements. Kiru follows because Renard keeps aiming at innocent bodies. Inside the house smoke blinds them and floorboards crack loudly. Renard swings hard and tries to bait Kiru into reckless rage. Kiru breathes once and keeps his stance measured and lethal. Renard boasts about past abuse and tries to reopen old scars. Kiru's hands shake but his voice stays dangerously quiet. He says pain taught him patience and patience will end Renard. Renard lunges and drives a blade toward Kiru's heart. Kiru twists aside and the blade slices his shoulder deeply. Blood spills and Kiru staggers yet refuses to fall. Freya hears the impact and screams Kiru's name from outside. Setsuna crashes in and sees blood, then howls with panic. Kiru raises one palm telling them not to break formation. He heals the wound partly because full healing costs time. Renard grins and says Kiru finally looks human and weak. Kiru answers that weakness is choosing cruelty when power exists. He strikes Renard's wrist and knocks the sword into ash. Renard grabs a hostage and presses a dagger near their throat. Kiru freezes because one wrong move means instant death. Kureha appears behind Renard and holds her blade at his neck. Renard laughs and says knights will not kill without orders. Kureha says her order is truth and she has learned it. Renard jerks the hostage backward and tries escaping through fire. Setsuna leaps and blocks the exit with claws bared wide. Renard slashes her arm and she grunts but stands firm. Kiru steps forward and catches Renard's arm with iron grip. Renard struggles and screams that Kiru is worse than demons. Kiru says demons hide in men who enjoy helpless suffering. He forces Renard to look at the burning village outside. Renard refuses guilt and spits that villages exist to obey. Kiru's eyes sting and tears mix with soot and blood. He remembers Anna's shaking hands and the children's terrified faces. Kiru demands Renard call off soldiers and free remaining captives. Renard tries one last lie and offers secrets for his life. Kiru rejects bargains because bargains let monsters return stronger. He disables Renard with brutal efficiency and ends the threat. The house groans and Kureha drags everyone out into air. Freya reaches Kiru and grips him as he sways silently. Setsuna checks her bleeding arm and refuses to show weakness. Kureha orders soldiers to drop weapons and some flee immediately. Villagers emerge slowly and stare at the ruined square in shock. Anna steps outside supported by Freya and begins crying again. Kiaru kneels and apologizes for arriving too late to stop fires. Anna forgives him and says saving lives now still matters. Kiaru looks at Freya and Setsuna, then nods with resolve. Like the video if you felt the tension in this rescue. Subscribe for more clear recaps that respect your time. Comment what choice you would make when hostages are used. Dawn approaches and smoke thins above the broken rooftops. Kureha says the kingdom will respond harder after Renard's fall. Freya agrees and says Norn will tighten control across regions. Kiaru listens and accepts that the war has only begun. He tells them to leave before soldiers regroup and strike back. They gather survivors' supplies and move towards safer forest trails. Kiaru glances back once and sees ash covering his childhood road. The road darkens ahead and Kiaru chooses to keep walking.